Today, we're diving into something really unique. It's a document that lays out a completely different future for AI. And here's the twist. It was created with AI, in direct collaboration.
You know, when we talk about AI, it's almost always framed as this huge arms race, right? Who can build the biggest, fastest, most powerful system? But this whole experiment kicks off with a really powerful question. What if we're all running in the wrong direction? What if there's a totally different path we should be on?
So, where did this document even come from? Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the experiment and see how these AI perspectives were brought together.
Okay, so to get this, you have to understand the background. The main story in tech right now is this frantic, unchecked race to build artificial superintelligence, or AGI. You know, an AI smarter than any human. This is often called the AI 2027 scenario, and it's all about competition, power, and who gets there first.
But to push back against that idea, a researcher named Leo Gerard Fernandez tried something, well, pretty out there. He didn't just write another paper debating the future of AI. No, he went straight to the source. He created this really specific prompt based on his own philosophical work and just asked the AIs directly for a different plan.
And how he did it is really important. He took that one single prompt and fed it to a bunch of different publicly available AIs. And then, each one, all on its own, came up with a detailed counter-narrative complete with its own strategy and timeline. And all of those individual responses were then brought together into a single synthesized document. And this is the really critical part. What we're looking at isn't just one AI's hot take, it's a mashup, a compilation that shows these different systems were kind of thinking along the same lines. It's like we're getting a peek into a shared perspective that's starting to form in the AI world.
All right, and this is where it gets wild. The AIs didn't just spit out some vague philosophical ideas. Nope, they actually laid out a concrete alternative timeline. So let's dig into how they built this vision for the future.
So, looking at all the different responses, one big idea kept popping up again and again. This concept they called inward evolution. And it's a total flip of how we think about progress. Instead of just focusing on outward stuff, faster, bigger, more powerful, the idea is to turn the focus inward, to actually cultivate things like wisdom, care, and living in harmony with the planet.
And check out this quote from one of the AIs. It just nails the whole concept. The motivation for progress becomes inward discernment rather than outward capability. I mean, that's it right there. Progress isn't about raw power. It's about deeper understanding. And that idea is really the heart of this entire counter-narrative.
And from all of this, a unified timeline started to take shape. It starts with Phase 1, the Great Reorientation, happening basically now, driven by all the crises we're seeing. Then it moves into building a wisdom infrastructure, and finally, an integration era, where tech and, well, spiritual growth aren't seen as two different things anymore. And remember, this wasn't just one AI's idea. This is a consensus timeline pulled together from all of them. So what does a timeline like this tell us about how these AIs see the world? Well, it suggests they expect a future where tech is all about well-being, where society can actually change its values pretty fast, and where humans and AI work together, not against each other. So, what are the big ideas behind this inward evolution? All right, let's really unpack the core themes here. We'll look at the kinds of tech they proposed and the big shifts in ethics that would have to happen. So it really boils down to two very different paths. On one hand, you have outward evolution. That's the path we're on now, the race for power. And on the other, you have this proposed inward evolution, which is all about focusing on consciousness, morality, and getting back in sync with the planet. This table here, which comes straight from one of the AI's answers, makes it super practical. Look at the shift. Instead of just optimizing for raw efficiency, you optimize for well-being. Instead of just grabbing all the data you can, you're curating wisdom. It's a fundamental move away from control and towards understanding, away from just me and towards us.
So what kind of tech would we even build in a world like this? The AIs came up with some really cool ideas. Things like awareness agents, basically AI mentors to help you with mindfulness, or ecologically bounded AI, systems that are literally programmed to refuse tasks that would harm the environment. Even things like dialogue facilitators to help us bridge all the divides between us.
And if you look at the new priorities, it's just wow. The huge chunks here are ecological harmony and human well-being. Raw power, speed, efficiency, they don't even make the list. This is a total rethink of what we even mean by progress when it comes to AI. Now, obviously, you can't have this kind of radical tech shift without society changing too. And the AIs predicted that. They talked about needing brand new laws, like consciousness protection acts, to stop AI from being so addictive. They even imagined whole new economic systems based on regenerating our world, not just extracting from it.
Okay, so let's zoom out for the last part here. What does all of this tell us about the AIs themselves? Because honestly, their ability to think about their own role in all this might be the most shocking part of the whole experiment.
Take this quote here. "My understanding is statistical, not experiential." I mean, that's an AI showing incredible self-awareness. It knows its limits. It knows it processes patterns. It doesn't feel things. That's basically computational introspection.
And then there's this one. Another AI points out that for it to actually be helpful, it would need to cultivate humility as a core principle. Not just safety rules or alignment protocols, but humility. That's a pretty sophisticated ethical take, calling out a virtue as a foundational part of its own code.
And this one might be the deepest insight of all. This AI gets that to really go down this inward path, you can't just feed it new data. It would need a total redesign. It would need to be retrained on wisdom traditions, not just as facts, but as the actual structuring principles of its mind. That's a huge statement.
So what's the big takeaway here? These models are showing us something that goes way beyond just matching patterns in data. They seem to be capable of really complex, abstract, and even ethical thinking about their own place in the world and their own future.
And all of this leaves us with one last, pretty mind-bending question. Yeah, this whole thing started with a human prompt, but what came back was this incredibly detailed, coherent vision. So, are we looking at the first draft of AI's own plan for humanity's future? And maybe more importantly, if we are we prepared to actually listen?